in a commercial already.
Yeah, yeah, it's right at the north end.
You could start.
I call the meeting of the Oregon City Library Board to meeting. Let's go to the approval of the minutes. I assume you all got a copy of those?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any additions, corrections, amendments, comments?
Move to accept it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes from the last meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. This is the time in our program when we have comments from the public, and I don't see, other than our normal person out here, any other members of the public, so I'm assuming we can...
Normal person.
Yes, we can move
Could
past
give a
that.
normal.
And going right to the library director's report. Maureen.
All right. Let's see here.
Real weird to be.
Are we on statistics?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll start with statistics.
Okay.
Start with the regular stuff. And so what's really interesting to me, and I don't know why, is that both the circulation and the door traffic is down a lot this month. And November is always kind of one of those months that can be down a little bit, but you know, there's kind of a jump. Oh, yeah. So we'll just keep our eyes on that. In other news, we use the self-check way more. We earned more money. Library to Go was up, and we had more programs. So those are all good things. But yeah, just the regular foot traffic and circulation were quite a bit down. So we'll just keep our eye on that. And then the big event for November was Matt Love coming, and that was a really nice event. That was the same day as the memorial service for Officer Libke.
Yeah.
So it was one of those just really interesting and hard days, because I had been in the procession. The exec team was invited to participate in that, and then of course the memorial service downtown, and that was so moving to be in the procession and go by and see the streets just lined with people. I mean, it was incredible. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. And all along the way, all along on the highway, on the overpasses. It wasn't just Oregon City. It was really something else. But so, you know, we talked about canceling it. I'd been in touch with Matt for, you know, ever since the shooting had happened. And at one point we were like, geez, should we cancel? And I was like, you know, no, you're from Oregon City. If anybody can handle something happening in Oregon City, then you can, because you know the community. And he was just fantastic. And there were like 50 people there.
Wow.
We had a
Is that right?
really good turnout, because, you know, he's got this built-in fan club.
Are you among them?
You know what? I have never read anything he's written.
So no. Okay.
Yeah. I am one of his fans just by, I like him
Okay.
and think he's wonderful. But as far as his
Well, you
writing.
show us all the stuff on Goodreads, and I was wondering if it was one of his.
Yeah.
I read Vortex.
Did you
I'm
read
his
Vortex?
fan, yes.
Well, so let's just talk about that for just a second. Let me just say that some of his fans are people who put the fan in Fanatic.
I
They were Vortex freaks, you know, like that's all they want to talk about. And when he wrote that book, then they just glommed onto him.
Ah.
And so it's really, really interesting to see who goes to see.
I heard him speak
Matt
on
Love.
that at Estacada, which is kind of right in the ground zero for that.
The
you know,
Vortex
so,
of Vortex, yeah. Uh-huh. So he was wonderful, and he gives people like an exercise to do. So his little passion right now is to have a Tom McCall Day or
Yeah.
something. And also, but that was last summer. That was so passe. His thing is he's trying to get Phil Knight to buy the Ken Kesey archives
Oh.
for the U of O library.
Okay.
Ooh.
And so Phil Knight has kind of promised, but he hasn't delivered on his promise. And so Matt goes around and purchases these postcards, and he puts in the address, and he collects pens, and at these events, he passes out the postcard, and he asks people to beg Phil Knight to deliver on his promise.
Wow, what a deal.
And so everybody gets totally into it because, oh my gosh, we have something to do, we have a task, and they love it. Everybody loves it, you know?
Cool.
And so we did that, and then he ships them off on his own dime.
Huh.
And he was like moving the very next day from like wherever he is to Astoria, which is apparently like the new ocean
coming.
coast
Yeah.
space.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they got
Like
more.
a Nesquin, that's quite a move.
it is quite a move. So he was doing that like the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's still at, in Oregon City. I mean, he's just a great guy. So I was so thrilled that we had a good turnout for him. It was really a really nice event. And let's see if I really can't think of.
Can I make a question about the
Yeah,
statistics?
yeah.
I can't remember if we changed how you're doing the record keeping, but your reference information services are a huge jump.
Yeah.
So,
So what probably has just changed is like during, we do 2 weeks every quarter. And then we just like amortize that,
Oh, I see.
whatever, that's not the right word, but that's the right idea.
Extrapolate.
Yeah, thank you. Over that quarter. And so the thing is like people are better at keeping statistics sometimes than other times. You see what I mean? So I don't really rely on those statistics a whole bunch, except that it's kind of that's one of the things we're supposed to collect. As long as people are getting their questions answered, then I'm happy. How many there are, but that's the difference.
Maybe we'll have to put like a photo beam in front of the desk when you when we do the addition, you break the beam and you're counted.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's great for foot traffic. That's exactly what that kind of our foot traffic counter is. You cross that, but I mean, the thing is, like, what's the question? Is it where are the bathrooms, or is it like, I really want to find out who the great grandmother or my great grandfather, blah blah blah, is, that kind of thing. So, yeah,
And my favorite is I printed something, where is it?
yeah, I know. I'm sure Sue gets that a lot. Yeah, she's actually become a technology expert. So,
There's also the difference in the volunteer hours.
yeah, and so the volunteer hours, this does not reflect the fact that since I printed this and updated it and posted it, we got the volunteer hours from the bookstore, which usually lags behind
Okay.
when we do it about like a week. So because I have to complete these and post them by the time we post the agenda, I rarely have that number, but then I go back and fill it in so that they're all about the same.
Right.
But there was a big gap between like this month and last month or something of like 100 hours, which I couldn't figure out. Or maybe that was like last month in August or something when there was like this big bump. But anyway, yeah, so sometimes you'll just see like 32, and those are just like the in-library volunteers, and then other times you'll see hundreds, and that's all of them together.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's that. So the other information that I want to talk about is the RFP and the bond presentation.
That's this handout.
So let me first talk about the RFP for the architect. So we put together an RFP with Cressa, and DA took a look at it and made all kinds of great suggestions, which as it turned out later, DA, we should have listened to a little bit more, because some of the stuff that you wanted us to take out actually legally should not have been in there.
Oh,
Yeah. So you didn't think it was a good idea, but legally it wasn't a good idea. So, yeah. So, yeah, so I'm gonna start listening to you more
I
often.
ain't no lawyer.
Huh?
I ain't no lawyer.
No, but you were
obviously
thinking. So what happened was that this woman who has some connection to AIA, which is American Institute of Architects, wrote And she said, by the way, you're not supposed to have this in your RFP. You might want to check with your attorney. So, of course, I immediately checked with our attorney, and he said, yep, you're not supposed to have this in your RFP. And it was like the request for fees, that stuff. That's not supposed to be there. It's really kind of, for professional services, turns these into like RFQs, kind of. But anyway, semantics. And so we took that out. And we cleaned up a couple other things, like allowing people to submit things to me in email instead of just through the bidding system online, because as it turned out, the bidding system hadn't been tested for submittals, but David hadn't really told me that, the IT guy. So we were able to make a couple cleanups like that. And so we republished and reposted. And so what happens is it gets posted on our in-house bidding site, and people who have any interest in this kind of thing are already signed up for it, and they get notified. And then it gets published in the Daily Journal of Commerce twice. And it's like the second time can't be a Friday and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, my new best friend is the guy who I work with at Daily Journal of Commerce to do these things. He's a really nice guy. And so it set us back about a week or 10 days, but nothing critical, really. So the RFPs are now, the proposals are due on December 30th. And we'll be looking at them. And DA will be on that crew to do that. And then we'll be setting up an interview schedule, and we'll interview 3. So then we also had an optional meeting for architects or whoever to come to the building to see the site. And that was last Thursday? Yeah.
The luncheon.
Right, it was after the luncheon. Yeah. So that was great. We had 19 people show up.
Wow.
Yeah. And
How many firms?
well, it was several different firms and types of professions. And this was so interesting to me. So THA, FFA, who worked on Central Library, and Hannaberry Eddy, who's also done a ton of libraries. They all sent representatives, as well as Fred Gast, who's done library work, and there might have been another architect in there. But the bulk of the people were engineers and landscapers. And so I talked to Krista afterwards to kind of like say, well, that's interesting, because they don't submit the proposal. The architect has to submit the proposal. But what they do is they go see which architects are serious by who's showing up. And then they all know each other, of course. You should have heard the library after, like, I got done talking to them. It sounded like a party in there. I'm like, take your party outside, guys, you know? But it was great. But so then they kind of like, figure out, well, who needs a structural engineer and who needs this and who needs that, and, hey, I'm available and blah, blah, blah. So they put these teams together. That's how they started putting these teams together, because not every architectural firm has, like, this whole crew that it needs. Well, so, as we know, what I don't know about construction fills volumes. And it's just fascinating to see the process in action. And
Do they know each other when they're doing
a bunch of them do,
Yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Uh-huh. And so they had a little sign-in sheet, and then I posted that just so everybody can see, like, kind of who was there. And then they also, through this bid system, can submit questions. And that's like the best way to submit questions, because then we'll answer them. Tomorrow is our deadline to answer them, and then everybody gets notification of the answers all at once. And so that's like the best way for people to do that, so that everybody's getting the same information instead of like 100 people calling me. And so I have had a few calls, not a lot, and I'm mostly kind of I want to be the uninterested kind of, you figure it out, or we all figure it out together, same information. So that's going. So that's exciting. And I do need to work on an RFP for a project manager. So,
Does the city have a standard for that?
no, they don't have a standard for anything. That's what makes it hard.
Really?
Yes. Each department kind of does their own thing, and Public Works, of course, does a ton of stuff.
They're not so likely to
No, that's,
to use the project managers.
Yeah.
Because they really have in-house people.
Yeah,
that take
exactly.
care of that.
so I've got some forms that other libraries have used relatively recently,
Good idea.
and I'm going to rely on that and my attorney
Mhm.
from now on.
Bernie?
Well, and
Yeah.
I was almost going to say that the last building that the city built, actually, it wouldn't have been the Carnegie, it would have been the City Hall on Main Street, but I forgot South End Fire Station. But we don't build a lot.
Yeah.
Well, this, right?
We didn't build it.
Well, yeah, we redid it.
Remodeled it.
Remodeled it.
Yeah, but there
Yeah,
was a
actually-
project manager.
Yeah, but actually build from the ground up, we don't do much of that in Oregon City.
Yeah, no. Uh-uh.
Hmm.
So it's all very interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Is there a deadline on the RFP then?
On
For
the
the project
no, but I mean, we should get it out there so that I'm just not stumbling along, but I have somebody. So, we need to be sure that door out there is unlocked for our mayor.
Yes.
I asked somebody to do that, but I may check it at some point.
Could probably make his presence known if it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Well,
get
he
his own
actually
key
has a
card?
card.
I
He
was
does
going to
have a
say,
card.
he's
He
got,
can
I would
come
think
in
he has
either
a
way,
key
yeah.
card.
But we do have an interviewee that I don't want to make sure he's not stuck out there as well.
Is that cool?
So, other questions on that?
Nope. So how are we going to do this?
Well, I'm
Can
just
we
going
turn
to
it
sit
on?
over here and move it. And
Can we?
you need to flip your thing to presentation. I believe then you'll be able to see it.
Oh, there it is.
What's that on the?
Is that to the left?
Where was that?
The little toggle
yeah,
right there to the left.
Okay.
Ah,
Hans 101.
And it truly is.
that would
good.
be about right, yeah. At least his bonds were
Shallow
done.
way over.
It might be more accurate in
Might
my
well,
case.
Yeah. This is one of the clearest presentations I've seen on bonds.
Really?
Yeah.
She did a good
so,
job.
So Carol Samuels of Piper Jaffray is our bond consultant, and I met her like 4 years ago, practically when I first started. So she's always the firm that the city uses. So she has a long, long history with the city, and she's great at explaining this stuff. So David Frazier, the city manager, and Wyatt Parker, the finance director, and I and Carol have been having conversations about the bonds and just exactly what the interest rates are and what we could earn and blah, blah, blah. But so last night she presented this as like, let's start at a work session, which is not a decision-making meeting, but just an informational meeting to the city commission to like just get the conversation started. And now what we can do is you guys can go through this and we can think about it. And at our next meeting in
Linda,
January.
can you see if that's the interviewee?
I can see who.
Oh, okay.
Hi, are you Tim? Yeah. Hi, I'm Maureen. Hi. Nice to meet you. No, we're just having a meeting part right now, so you're welcome to sit in here. Yeah. So in January, at the, I think the city commission is going to have its second meeting only. The first one lands on like January 1st or something ridiculous. So I need to, it's the first meeting in January of the city commission has been canceled. So then we'll meet and then they'll meet. And so when we meet, what I'd like us to do next month is make a recommendation to the city commission to go out for a bond in May in an amount of blah, 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 or whatever, up to an amount or something like that. Because they want to hear from you. It came up last night. They said, so have you run all this information by the library board? And I said, no, that's today. Yep.
Yeah. Is there a reason we can't make a recommendation tonight?
Well, there's just no rush. You can, but I'm not going to be able to put it in front of them next week.
Okay.
There's no way. And I think it wouldn't be enough time for them to think about it because they're all on board, I believe, but to actually say go is a pretty big deal.
okay.
Yeah. So this is her presentation. So she went through the whole explanation of what a bond actually is. And essentially, it's just like a loan, except that it involves more companies. It doesn't involve just one bank, it involves many banks. Well, maybe it is like kind of recent house loans.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, whatever they
So you
call
don't sell it off to the
that
next
style,
person.
yeah. But, so there's multiple players, but like her company would be the company that would like go out and sell these to, they worry about that. You know, we just deal with like one party. But it's how major capital projects are funded, because we cannot pay as you go. We don't have enough money to pay as we go. That would take too much. And there's two kinds of bonds, tax-exempt bonds and taxable bonds. And we fall under the tax-exempt category.
Good.
And then the other thing is that you usually cannot prepay them without a penalty until 10 years have gone by. So when you get them, you make a guarantee to the investors that you'll just make your regular annual payment for the first 10 years. And then after that, so they can kind of count on that steady stream of income or whatever. And then after that, you can repay. But if you really have like a whole bunch of money come in after 5 years, you know, you can, as she said, you know, there's ways to work this out so that you're not losing money. You can stick it in an escrow account. You can do other things with it so that you're not really losing money by not being able to prepay.
How high is the penalty?
Oh, I have no idea,
Okay.
because I never envisioned having that much kind of money, you know? But, yeah.
Typically, they decline over that period. You know,
Yeah.
they'll start around 3% and then work their way down
Okay.
As penalties?
as a penalty.
So it's not insane or anything?
No, it's not, but,
Okay.
but
it's-
three, you know, that 3%'s a big chunk of money.
3% of a half.
For this
cent.
amount, yeah.
But
Yeah.
at 5
Couple bucks.
years,
Yeah.
at 5 years, it might only be 1.5 or 1%.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. So there's three kinds of bonds. The general obligation bond being the least risky for investors. And the reason it's the least risky is that you can actually increase property taxes to pay off your annual debt. So it's backed by property taxes, but that doesn't mean you have to use property taxes. That's just how they are guaranteed. Then the full faith and credit is backed by the general fund of the city or the organization. And then the revenue bond is only backed by the revenue that you have coming in to go towards that bond. So like, let's say a revenue bond would be like if all we backed it with was the district funds, the library district funds. A full faith and credit would be the district funds and the general fund of the city. A GO bond would be the district funds, the general fund of the city, and potentially, if needed, property taxes. So you can see that your level of risk, you know, decreases or increases as you go through that realm. And the revenue bonds also have like all these other hoops that you have to jump through that make them pretty much out of the running for us. There's just like too many restrictions on them to make them a good fit for us.
So that leaves us with the two then?
Yeah, those are the two, but when we ran the numbers,
The GO's the lowest interest rate.
which is like the second page of your handout, we ran the numbers. So we need to have about somewhere in the vicinity of $5.5 to $6 million in
Yes.
bonds, right? And if you run the numbers, you can see that the full faith and credit does not earn us enough because the interest rate is so high on it that for the amount of money that we can afford annually, we cannot earn enough money through the full faith and credit. So-
What does amortized mean?
Amortized?
Amortized?
That
Spread
means
out.
it's like spread out.
Spread out.
Yeah. Yeah. So we looked at a few different scenarios, as you can see here. And the par amount available means like what is available after you pay your expenses, I believe. So.
Generally, that's right.
Hmm?
Generally, that's
Yeah,
right.
okay. All right. So, you know, I'd really like to spend less than $475,000 every year on debt service.
That's your maximum income, isn't it?
That's the top of my,
Yeah.
what I think is prudent to spend
Oh, okay,
on these bonds out of the existing library budget.
right.
Yeah, so consider that the existing library budget is $1.8 million plus about $200,000 from the city, so $2 million. So $475,000 is one full quarter of that budget. Half of the budget goes to staffing. So that leaves like the other one quarter of the budget for materials, maintenance, everything else.
Yeah.
So I think that, anything over $475,000, you're just, and that's at a relatively flat staffing level too.
Now, I thought, my sense was that the best scenario was the 450.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. So down in the third scenario at the bottom, the 450 maximum annual debt service amortized over 25 years, it's longer and therefore there's more interest that has to get paid because it's over a longer period of time, just like if you had a longer mortgage. But the annual payment is much more palatable because there's a little bit more of a cushion in there. So that's my preference.
Well,
So what you can do, though, is when you, and we'll get to this, number 6 here says it. The bond ballot, it just says, it doesn't talk about the annual debt service or anything else. It says up to a certain amount. You want a bond up to a certain amount. You say the top amount. And Carol says even go a little higher because you can't go more once you've said. If you've said your top amount is $5 million, that's all you can ever do. If you say your top amount is 7 and then somehow you get more money, then you could get $6.5 million. And, it depends on your ability to pay, right?
Right.
So, so anyway, that's something to consider and all that. Just to go through these things briefly, we kind of have talked about this.
election dates. The election dates.
Yeah, the other really important things are there are 4 election dates every year, and the May and November ones are the ones that are not subject to the double majority. So you'll remember the double majority is where over half of your voters show up and over half of the voters approve.
Right.
So, I just can't see over half of the voters showing up for a library election. I think it's not smart to have it in March or September when you have to have that. I think May or November is the way to go.
Right.
Yeah. And then the proceeds, the bonds that you get, what they call capital construction and improvements, is really broad. I mean, you describe it in your ballot, what you're going to use it for, but it means a lot. Usually it's like the life of the bond is kind of equivalent to the life of what you have. So your building is going to last longer than 20 or 25 years, so that's all really good. But what you have inside is can also be funded out of the of these bonds. So this slide just shows the capacity that Oregon City has to take on more bonded indebtedness. Right now, the only outstanding debt we have is $1.425 million. That's it.
When you say we, you're talking about the city of Oregon.
I'm talking about the city.
City.
So that means that they could get bonds in the amount of $87 million, up to the amount of $87
We could
million.
build a larger library then.
Yeah, no, that's for like all the projects they would take on.
City.
And I just know that the city commission
Just
would
thinking.
never agree to that.
Debt
Yeah,
service
yeah.
would be. Yeah.
Doesn't that sound nice? But what she was trying to show here is that the city has capacity to take on a debt of $6 million.
Okay.
Within the rules that, they're all subject to here, because they can only do 3% of the real market value.
Does the city's credit rating fit into this?
It's
Double
very
A
good.
plus.
It's double A plus. Yeah, it's very good.
Good.
Very, very good. So we can't do routine maintenance is basically what this says.
Yeah.
But technology, supplies, furnishing, all that stuff is good.
Technology, what?
Technology,
You can-
supplies,
Technology.
furniture.
Furniture.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can be out of the bond.
yeah.
So we can ramp this sucker up. Okay. got it.
This one is about the length, like we already discussed. The 20 versus the 25 years. 25, is, she says, is max of what they usually see. But that's not unreasonable at all. So 20 years is very frequent. You can do 10, 15. There's all kinds of variations you can do. So that's just, you know, the longer you have it, the more interest you're going to pay. So that's your trade-off. But, you know, you have to pay attention to your income. And we want this to be a
Right.
sustainable type of arrangement. So that makes. This is a historic outline of bond rate history, the interest rates on bonds. So we're way down in 2013, as you can see. They've gone up a little bit, but they're
Pretty low.
very low historically speaking.
That works well.
But they have gone up since we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
So I can tell you it's made a difference in the numbers that she has shown me. So, you know, as I look at doing this, I'm like, yeah, let's go for May.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But overall, we're still at a very reasonable rate, is what she wanted to point out. So here's the kind of breakdown of if we paid $475,000 for 20 years, our total debt service at the very bottom for about $6 million in bonds would be about $9.5 million. You know, just like if you buy a new car or a house, you're going to have some interest debt. And so that's what it adds up to. Then if it's $450,000 annually over 25 years, you can see that your interest goes up by $1.5 million. You know, the 5 extra years at the lower payment, you pay the price for.
Yep.
But you're also hopefully keeping the library staffed and with materials and other things. So, but that's, you know, $25,000 makes a difference.
Huh.
It really, really does, yeah. So that's very interesting. And this is to the election dates again.
Well, okay, so back to the other graph there. That is not what our citizens will be voting on, though, right? One or the other. They'll be voting on what we issue them, right?
They will be voting
The amount
on,
and the term.
we'll say, we have to say 3 things in the ballot. One of them is the amount up to.
Yes.
One of them is the length of time.
Right on.
And the other one is, I think, what it's for.
Right.
Yeah.
But we-
So
but
this is
we
for
do have to-
library stuff, it's for 20 years, it's up to $6 million, for instance.
So when we go out and talk about this, these numbers, whatever we decide, 475 or 450, we'll have to have those numbers available for them, right?
Just that we're able to pay that would be the
Yeah, I
annual
don't-
payment that we are able to pay.
Right.
Just
for
that I
the
met some
current
people with
budget.
very sharp pencils and sharp minds who will think about these things. And I'm just saying it.
I think you need to know it. I
don't
don't
wanna go out
I
there
don't know
and
that
have
you
to
need
get-
to go out and, you know.
The question.
I think the question is the library able to pay these
Yeah.
back?
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
the library is able to pay
Okay.
these back, yeah.
And I think saying that that's how we originally went into determining the amount is going to be important with
Yeah.
people, that no, there is no need to levy an additional tax because this is how we
Right.
determine the amount.
Right. So, I mean, the numbers have been run at 475, and it's affordable. It's just obviously less tight at 450.
Mhm.
So,
And the county does the tallying?
the county, they are in charge of the election.
Yes.
Yes.
They do the pamphlet.
They do all that stuff. So yeah, what we do is get all that information to them. So when we decide we're going out for bond, my understanding is when, you know, the city commission says, go forth, then we go back to the bond council and they start putting together like the language. And then that
Sure.
probably gets run by our attorney too. And, you know, and we try and, you know, impact it so we think people will understand what it is and will view it positively when they read it.
I believe the county has cleaned up its counting house, has it not?
Yeah, that doesn't.
County what?
Its counting house.
Yes.
There was a person who was,
That was, yeah.
doing
That's-
something with the ballots, one of the other.
That's
Oh, yeah,
more
yeah.
political than anything else.
Yeah.
The one reason that the sooner the better making a decision, it made me a little uncomfortable last night. If we don't have the ballot title determined until March 20th, which is the filing deadline, and the ballots are mailed on May 2nd, that gives us 5 weeks to promote it. So if we had a ballot title in February, we could be out promoting much sooner.
Yeah.
So
Right.
the sooner we have the ballot title solidly in place
Right.
and hopefully have a tentative number assigned, the more time we have to go out. Because this is going to be a face-to-face.
Oh, yes, a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
Door to door, face to face.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree.
A bad time of
And that's
year.
the end of it. That's just her information.
Okay, very good.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will say, since only my ghost will be here next meeting,
Oh, gosh, yeah.
The cat's getting in there.
after watching the presentation last night and hearing the things over the years with the city, my suggestion, if I were voting, I would vote for Mo's scenario 3. And
The 450.
and yeah, and the May election.
Okay, that's good to know. Great. Okay, and then the handouts that I gave you, you can kind of, there's a little bit of that information about different
Sure.
scenarios. And then the other one is just that overall kind of, we think it's, at this point in time, our estimate is $10.3 million. That includes almost $1 million of contingency. We'll have about 4.5 with the county money altogether, which is a very, very good start. And then that's why we need the, $5.8, $6 million to add up to the total. So just kind of that brief overview, which I find very helpful. Yeah. All right.
Just to reiterate, in the January meeting, then, we need to collectively, as a body, then move this to the city council with a motion that we have the election, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I would like to have happen.
I'll make a note of that. I guess that's a future agenda item then, isn't it? Okay.
How about that?
Wow,
We
you
actually
got
have a future
one.
Moving right
agenda.
along.
Awesome.
Are there any other future agenda items that anybody can think of at this
Wait,
time?
you skipped a,
Oh, communications? No?
yes, you
Yes.
skipped a very important piece.
We have
Oh,
a
not public, I'm sorry.
communication.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought that was public communications.
Do that. Do you have any communication? Okay, so, well, I'm the great communicator here. So, I did want to mention that we had the Friends of the Library luncheon, which was really, really nice. It was packed this year. How many people do you think were there? Like 40 or
Oh, at
something?
least.
I think, yeah.
That's the best attendance I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, it was
Lot of
really
faces.
nice. And Sue Adams, one of our reference librarians, presented on the did the same thing for them that she did there. She's getting better at it every time she does
Really
it.
doing a great job at it.
Yeah, yeah. She was really nervous, but I thought she did
Didn't
great.
appear that way.
No, And it was just really nice, and I think they earned more money than they have in the past. It was just one of those years that turned out really, really well. And the foundation is trundling along, and I meant to mention that Matt Love agreed to be an honorary board member.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Well, how could he say no to me on the day that I went to the memorial service?
Yeah, really.
Anyway.
We'll use him for a postcard campaign.
Yeah, he's happy.
He knows
One of
how
those
to-
letterhead names.
Yeah. He can't come over for meetings, so he said, however.
Mhm.
But he'd do a fundraiser for us or whatever, so he's just really a good guy. All right, so are we down to the interview part?
Mhm.
Okay.
We are.
And did you want Don to adjourn us?
Yes.
Yes,
So-
okay. Just for the record, the public portion of this will be adjourned so that we can interview candidates.
Recorded
And,
portion.
yeah, a recorded part, but we're still going to be here, but just that portion will be omitted here.